Welcome to the July 6th TTAC meeting. Thank you to Navani for hosting us today. And for those that are here in person and those online, we'll go ahead and get started. And I'll turn it over to James for the roll call.
All right, good morning. Please let us know if you are online. If you're here in person, just let us know as well. I'll probably be able to see you, though, to know who's here. So, Ty Adley, Marshall County. David Armstrong, NDOT Fort Wayne. Leslie B., City of South Bend. Hi, good morning. Ryan Klussman. Good morning. Josh Corwin. Present. Good morning. Mike Daigle, South Bend International Airport. Chris Dressel, City of South Bend Community Investment. Amy Hill.
Here.
Good morning. Bill Holder. Good morning, Bill. Chris Jamrose, City of Mishawaka. Natasha Kaufman, Elkhart County Planning. Sean Klein, St. Joe County Area Plan Commission. Marcia McSherry, Kosciuszko County Administrator.
Present.
Morning. Sky Metters, St. Joe County Public Works. Jessica Miller, NDOT LaPorte. Morning. Steve Moriarty, Kosciuszko County Highway. Charles McKenzie, Elkhart County Highway.
Here.
Morning. Jason Peters, Marshall County Highway.
Here.
Morning. Derek Spears, City of Mishawaka.
Present.
Sean Cerisi, City of Plymouth.
Here.
Morning, Sean. Justin Taylor, City of Warsaw. And Brent Warren, City of Napanee.
Here.
Morning, Brent. All right, we have 9 members present in person, which is enough to be a quorum. It is not enough to do online virtual voting, so we won't have to do any roll call votes today. Folks that are online can feel free to participate. We just won't be able to accept first and seconds and votes from electronic participants today. But feel free to attend for the information and if you have any questions. So other than that, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to minutes. Hopefully everybody had an opportunity to review those. If there's any questions or comments, please feel free to make those. If not, I would entertain a motion from someone in person to approve those minutes.
I'll move to approve.
Do we have a second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. And I'll turn it right back to you, James, for the June modifications.
Yep, in your packet, there are modifications from June. Modifications are different items that the Transportation Technical Advisory Committee, as well as the Policy Board, have given staff authority to make changes on. They're usually minor in nature, technical corrections, minor edits, those kind of items. A full definition is online. We provide these, though, every month to let you know as a listing of all of the items that we have changed. So you can find those in your packet. You can also find all of these modifications on our website as well under the tips section. With that, I don't really have any other further reports. I guess then to mention at this point, because we've talked about it in the past, this is more informational, but it's related to this, is that the state finally has an approved STIP, a statewide transportation improvement program. Was roughly a year delayed, but it is finally approved. The approval date for MACOG's TIP, and this is a little inside, the inner workings, so you all might not necessarily be too excited about it, but the date that MACOG's TIP was included into the state's program was March. So all of the things that we did in April, May, June, and then the items that we'll handle here in July We will send those into the state. The state's asked for them by July 22nd. So we'll get them in next week, right after policy board, so the 13th. So then that the state can update its document to be current with where we're at. So we won't have to reprocess anything through the advisory committee or the policy board, but we will, now that the state's finally getting current with us, there's one more step to get us really synced, if you will. So I know that's a little inside information. Not a lot of folks necessarily are too worried about that, but just an FYI in case you were wondering. So with that, I don't have any other further items to report.
Anything under old business?
There's no old business today.
Then we can jump right into new business.
Right. All right. I will be your presenter today of Transportation Resolution 1822. This resolution is largely NDOT initiated resolutions. Item A is for adding a new project to the Transportation Improvement Program. We're adding in the preliminary engineering, the right-of-way, and then construction for this project. It's on US 31, and it's 1.4 miles south of State Road 10, or 110, to 0.31 miles south of State Road 10. This is an access control project. So this is on the southern side of Argus, basically from about, yeah, there we go. So from 16th Road to 700 North, it's on the south side of Argus. This is to essentially work on some access control items. There is an estimated cost to complete. So you'll see that we're adding in construction, but the construction of this is not going to be $50,000. You'll see that there's an estimated cost to complete of about 3.6 million that isn't programmed here because it's probably programmed for a further year than 2024. So you'll see that we're just programming those early phases of that project in item A. In item B, we have State Road 120 at Canyon Road 17, which is 4.2 miles west of State Road 15. It's an intersection improvement. It's in Elkhart County. We're adding in the preliminary engineering phase for this upcoming fiscal year. Right now, we're just adding in the preliminary engineering. You can see the estimated cost to complete that project is just about $5 million. Item C, it's also a resolution or also an amendment initiated by NDOT. It's a new project. It's on State Road 15. It is the bridge over Whitehead Ditch. This is also in Elkhart County. It's about 2.8 miles north of US 6. This is for a bridge replacement. Also just adding in the preliminary engineering. You can see the estimated cost to complete is about 2.2. Moving on, item D is an NDOT amendment adding in a new project. It is also on State Road 15. It's about 1.01 miles north of US 33 North Junction, and it goes to US 20. This project is HMA overlay or a hot mix asphalt overlay. It's doing a little paving work there on State Road 15. We're adding in the preliminary engineering, and the estimated cost to complete for that project is about $3.5 million. Moving on, item E, also from NDOT, adding a new project, State Road 13. This is nearly 10 miles north of US 30, so 9.46 miles north to US 30, to 3.53 miles south of US 6 West Junction. Another HMA overlay. I believe this is between the towns of, if you're kind of envisioning Kosciuszko County here, this would be between the southern side of Syracuse and the northern side of North Webster. The adding in the preliminary engineering, estimated cost to complete about $6 million. And that is just, again, adding in the preliminary engineering. Item F is an INDOT amendment to increase federal funding by $13 million, $13.5 million. We've reported on this before. We've added this project in before. They're now a little bit further along. So essentially what this is the preliminary, the planning and environmental linkages study for US 30, which the rough study limits for US 30 are between State Road 49 to the Ohio state line. And then also for US 31, which is between the Tipton Hamilton County line to US 30, excluding between State Road 931 junctions and Kokomo, essentially. So planning and environmental linkages study. This study is to look at US 30 and US 31 and to try and figure out a plan of action for the state for various projects. They will look at all options from no build to kind of full freeway upgrade and everywhere in between. We've previously mentioned this last year, the rough schedule. It feels like they're a little bit behind, and I don't mean that as a, just to kind of update you on where they're at from what was originally reported. Last year, they issued a request for proposals. They then received those requests for proposals. They were roughly looking for about 4 firms because they'll break this down into different sections of kind of management areas with, it seemed like a prime contractor over all of them. And the reason I say it seems a little bit behind is just that I believe that they were going to be starting work in the spring, and we're now in summer, and we're not necessarily seeing all of that work begin. So might be a few months to a quarter behind from what we originally discussed. But what this would be is really taking a deep dive into US 30 and 31 to figure out what the state wants to really look at in terms of upgrades for those facilities. So now that they have a better cost estimates of what the studies and scopes are going to cost, I believe that's where this increase is coming from, to reflect that the this is only preliminary engineering because it is a study. So it is not necessarily design that will lead into right-of-way and construction for this project. It may lead into multiple designs, right-of-way and constructions for other projects, but this project will start and end with the study. And so you'll see that it is for roughly $20.6 million in total cost. And that's an increase from the previous. The previous we all knew was a light number. It was largely put in for programming purposes so that they could get started. We all knew that they would come back and make this change. And so that's really, this is reflecting of probably closer to real world estimates for this study. Those are all the items for resolution 1822. If we would like, we can pause. Obviously, anyone could have interrupted me during any of that to ask any questions, but we can either, I'll leave it up to the chair's prerogative here. If you'd like to do a motion to approve resolution 1822, or you just want me to keep going?
Just go through them all.
We're just going through them all. All right. So next up, transit resolution 1922. These are largely initiated by Transpo. These are largely to make sure that they have everything for their upcoming grant. And so you'll see that there are first 2 items that are being removed. So the first one, item A, is to delete a project for transit operating tire lease. Item B is to delete a project for transit operating acquiring ADP hardware. For those that aren't familiar with transit grants, often we'll put in different what's called line items multiple years earlier. And then when we're coming up to actual do the programming, we may have determined, oh, we have extra funds or we've moved funds around, and so we really don't need those line items. So it's not necessarily that Transpo is no longer doing, the hardware project or a tire lease. It's just they might not need those funds from this fiscal year's apportionment. So really that's what's happening in item A and B. Item C is then increasing federal funding on transit operating, acquiring ADP software. So you see that going up by 160,000. Item D is for transit operating rehab and renovation of facilities. That's increasing by 160,000. And then item E is increasing by $213,079. And that's for transit operating assistance fixed route. With then item F adding in a project for transit operating miscellaneous support equipment. And then item G is adding transit operating by replacement. That's a greater than 30-foot bus, right? All right. Had to make sure I had my symbols correct. Item H then is for transit operating general development / comprehensive plan. So you can see all of those items that have then been added. That is then working kind of within the limits of Transpo's agreed upon apportionment for the fiscal year. And so that's where you see some additional funds being added to things, as well as then the deletion of those projects, moving those monies around. That's the rough summary of what we have for resolution 1922. And then the last resolution is items coming from the Unified Planning of Work program. These are things that MACOG works on. And the Unified Planning of Work program was approved last month in its entirety in its overall document. We are now adding in 3 projects. These aren't new. They were included in that UPWP. We're just adding them into the TIP. Since there was a challenge with the TIP and the STIP timing, we didn't add them previously. So that's why we're going back and adding them now. So item A is for pictometry. We have, over the years, over 2 years, flown with all 4 of the counties. This will be the 3rd flight for pictometry. And so we agree to fund that at kind of a 70-30 rate. This is half of the cost because we pay it every, essentially the bill is about $700,000. And then that's broken up into 2 payments, right? So this will be the first payment. The work would be done in spring 23. And so we're programming that in now. So that obviously means for our 24 UPWP, we'll also add in another pictometry line item. So just FYI, be prepared for that. But you'll see this is not a traditional 80-20 split. We've always agreed to cost share with the counties at a 70-30 rate. Item B is for the MACOG Clean Air Program. This focuses on our efforts working with Drive Clean Indiana, as well as then voluntary ways that folks can reduce their emissions. So this is funding coming from the South Bend urbanized area. And then item C is a similar amount then coming from the Elkhart Goshen urbanized area for the same program. Those are resolutions 18, 19, and 20. And I'm happy to answer any questions related to any of those items.
So the resolution 1822, the federal funding related to 30 and 31. So not to Kosciuszko County talking, that's sort of like a wet or talking about potential routes of like, so what is it kind of just start, the state starting to get thinking about things, or is this even not even related?
No, it's completely related to the efforts going on, within Kosciuszko County, and essentially on US 30 and 31, there have long been, whether you go back to the Blue Ribbon Commission or all the previous things. There's the US 31 was always on the like finish what we started kind of tier of projects, and US 30 was always on the like thinking for the future kind of projects, like that next tier. And so from US 30 through, or on US 31 from essentially US 30 south to about Kokomo, and there's sections south of Kokomo as well. There are just a number of challenges with the highway being unfinished compared to the rest of the work that was done, say, in Marshall County north to South Bend or around Kokomo or on the north side of Indianapolis, right? And so there have been a number of efforts over the years to try and figure out how to move projects forward. Sometimes that's started and stopped. For example, US 31 at State Road 10, there was a project program, then there wasn't money for it, it got unprogrammed, right? Now there's money for it and it's getting reprogrammed. But although there's been lots of studies over the years, there hasn't necessarily been an agreed upon plan of action, if you will. And so a planning and environmental linkages study is stronger than just a feasibility study. It's less than a categorical kind of exclusions environmental document or doing an EIS or anything like that, right? So it's not necessarily going to fully commit the state that an EIS might do, but it will hopefully then lead to identifying projects. And the whole concept of planning and environmental linkages is that you do a study that works on all of those kind of elements that are needed in the early phases of preliminary engineering to speed up the timeline for development of projects, right? And so the whole concept for 31 and then 30 is to do these large corridor, instead of doing spot level, hey, we're going to fix this one intersection, let's look at the whole corridor, figure out the overall plan of action and approach for that corridor, and then be able to do work that will then lead to projects, right? So, I mean, I think it's fully in line and fully with what, say, the US 30 coalition is looking for to move that forward, if you will.
Second thing related to the pictometry thing. So things will be Blue Lab for 21 and this will be for 23. So should we expect very similar, or have you been in communication?
It'll be the exact same cost.
Right.
So when we locked in our contract with pictometry, every flight costs the exact same amount. We have not been told any different for this flight.
Right. So the imagery itself, is it going to be similar to what we got in 21? Or
It should be.
Improvements?
It should. As of right now, I haven't heard of anything. There were slight improvements from the 19 flight to the 21 flight. I am not aware of anything at this point where things will be even better for 23. I think it'll be consistent with 21 as of right now, is what I know.
So it's kind of, the last time it was delivered, it was such a big data that you're having to try to plan for it. There's so much data there to house or whatever. It was like 1.5 terabytes.
I was gonna say it was a good terabyte. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was where IT was having that kind of whatever.
Yeah.
And just as I might have said to you before, I just really appreciate that MACOG kind of leads this stuff, because when county used to do it themselves, when we didn't get it. The 70-30 thing, we were paying a lot more or whatever for one, and it's just nice not to have to really think about it all that much. You think about it, we kind of just didn't take advantage.
Yep.
That's we really appreciate that.
Thanks, Bill. Did anybody else have any other questions related to resolution 1819 or 20?
I had a real brief question that's more general.
Sure.
Board. And I'm the city attorney. I'm involved in a lot of administrative stuff, and regional development for the city, but I took this over when our engineer retired. I don't feel like I have a whole lot of technical background, and I'm just curious about this is the first time I've come in person, and the meetings are a lot more enjoyable in person than they are online. And I appreciate getting all the information about what's going on in the region, but I just, from a board participation standpoint, I just want to make sure I understand my role and what's expected of me. Like, you guys have lots of technical staff, and I trust you and these folks who have these things going on, like communities know what's going on. But is there anything that, as a board member, you're supposed to be advising that I need to be digging into or studying up on this, or is it just sufficient that I show up here and if anything raises my antenna as I ask a question? Or
Yeah, so essentially the Transportation Technical Advisory Committee is supposed to be, so what we're doing action-wise is that we have to maintain what's called the Transportation Improvement Program. So that is essentially any project in our 4 counties that is being funded with federal funds for transportation, whether it's by a public transit agency, by the state of Indiana, or by a local government, or any project that is regionally significant that's being funded locally. It tends not to happen as much, right? Usually those larger capital projects tend to be funded with federal funds. But for example, when the local tracks projects originally started as state funds, those were still included in the Transportation Improvement Program, even though they weren't federal money. Now, good thing they were, because eventually the state transitioned them to federal funds. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's what they did, right? And so we didn't have to go and do a bunch of craziness that was already there. But in theory, anyone from the region, the public, or technical folks in local government, elected officials, could go look at this document and see from fiscal year 22 to 26, these are where all the investments are going for federal funds, right? Now, the legislation that created what MACOG is, the Metropolitan Planning Organizations, and kind of all of the planning rules around that, is that there should be some local control and local feedback of the federal program, and it should represent local priorities, right? And so essentially, like, this is a hyper generalization. So, right, essentially, this board and then our policy board, which is the elected officials from our cities and counties, then provide that local feedback, if you will. These are the priorities of this region. Those are the investments we should or shouldn't be making. Now, some of that is often with the money that MACOG say invests, because MACOG within the urban areas of South Bend and Elkhart has about $16 million that we're investing annually. So like right now we have a call for projects. That was just, folks just submitted those. We'll review those, and eventually later this year, we'll present in, hey, these are the projects that we want to invest in. And everybody here sits around and says, like, that's a good project or that's a bad project,
so
right?
it's still more of a policy-based judgment. So I just want to make sure that I'm even competent to sit here compared to an engineer who was here before. And if I'm falling down on the job of what you expect from Plymouth to be able to give you advice and technical stuff, it just sounds like I need to listen. And unless something sounds totally out of whack, like, why are we doing this?
Yep.
You guys know what you're doing. The communities who want the projects know what they're doing. And,
Yeah.
Okay.
And then often one of the nice things too is with the state projects, state does a good job of coordinating with local governments, but sometimes you also see projects that are going to happen in your community multiple years in advance, right? So, if, you're in Kosciuszko County and you see, oh, okay, on State Road 13 between Syracuse and North Webster, there's going to be a paving project in the next few years. Do we need to think through anything like there? Oh, hey, North Webster and Syracuse have been talking about a trail for a really long time. between there and connecting to the grade school? Is there anything that we need to talk to the state about as they think through that? Is there anything that we need to make the school aware of? Those kind of things. Those will happen through the regular channel process, but you'll also have an advanced understanding roughly. So that's a high level.
All right, thanks for
Yep.
indulging that.
Absolutely. There was probably like 3 other people around the table who have the same question. They never asked it.
So
So,
I think I'd speak just as an example of that. It's like I'm the GIS happen to for Kosciuszko County, so I'm not the area plan that kind of deals with transportation planning locally, or the highway superintendent who's dealing with whatever. But it's very good informationally for me just to hear what's kind of going on. And over the years, I've sort of picked up a little more on the trend. And I do work with our highway department pretty closely on road programs locally and things like that. So it's just good. I learn a lot from being involved. So even though maybe I don't, I mean, there's certain things I'm not going to be able to speak on. I learn a lot by being here, and maybe I could contribute a little bit here and there. So.
any other questions for resolution 18, 19, and 20?
If not, we would need a motion to endorse the 3 resolutions. We have a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? If not, resolutions 18, 19, and 20 are endorsed.
Josh, can I ask you to pass the microphone down to Sophia, because Sophia has the next few items from our grants and funding staff update.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here just to share a few funding opportunities to make you and your communities aware of them. So the first one you'll see on the agenda here is the T-Mobile Hometown Grant. So this is a grant that is specifically made for small towns and cities as defined by towns and cities with populations less than 50,000. Applications open July 1st. They're going to close September 30th. And you can request up to $50,000. No match is required, but if your project will cost more than $50,000, you do have to provide documentation on how you're going to make up that difference. These projects have a very broad definition of what these funds can be applied to, which is what makes this a little more exciting than the ones we generally apply for. So approved projects in the past have been something as small as fixing up a community pool, or something a bit bigger like making a public Wi-Fi network in a park. The next grant there is Okra Planning Grants have reopened. So those will be due August 12th by 11:59 p.m. There are a number of planning grants that you can apply for funding for, so I'm just going to go ahead and list those off really quickly. So those are water utility infrastructure plans, comprehensive plans, economic recovery plans, broadband plans, public facility plans, economic development plans, environmental assessment plans, historic preservation plans. Among other considerations to qualify for this one, at least 51% of your community has to be low to moderate income, and we can conduct surveys in certain cases if the census data does not agree with that 51%. And then a 10% local match is required for those. For that first T-Mobile grant, any local unit of government, so like a Main Street organization or the actual clerk or somebody like that, can apply for that grant. For the CDBG planning grant, that does have to be the actual local government there. I know that many of us have not worked together before, so if you're interested, or if you think anyone in your community will be interested, I'm more than happy to give you my contact information or a card, and I'm more than happy to take any questions on either of these 2 funding opportunities.
All right, our next item of staff update. This is breaking news, okay, or at least it was earlier this week. I don't know if it's actually broken officially, but on the Indiana Trails program. So this was originally on the agenda to remind everybody that the grant application is due August 1st. It's not anymore. In fact, everything you'll find about the program recently has been saying August 1st. However, we had a recent conversation with DNR. They had 2 updates. The Indiana Trails grant has been changed to a biennial grant program. and will not be accepting applications in calendar 22. The next grant round will most likely take place in spring of 2023 with a new application deadline around March 1st. We will be reaching out back out to DNR in December to kind of discuss the projects that we're already aware of in our area, to start to vet and get feedback from them on those things. But essentially the deadline, no longer August 1st, looks like it's going to be March 1st, 2023. The max grant award, though, this is positive. So this few months worth of delay, I think, is, in my opinion, hopefully worth it. The max grant award will be raised to $400,000, and the minimum grant amount has been raised to $100,000. There'll still be 80/20 reimbursement, but definitely a larger ceiling there. The head of the program is Bob Bronson, but Bob will be retiring August 1st. Quite possibly why there's also a little bit of a change in the deadline. But feel free to check in with Dustin, Dustin New from our office, if you have any questions or would like to discuss any trail projects, whether it's for Indiana Trails program or just trying to figure out other funding programs. So just an FYI, we thought it was going to be August. Breaking news, it's not. It looks like it's going to be March of next year. So the next item also is community crossings, which also breaking news. There's a new close date for community crossings. So community crossings matching grant program. Hopefully everybody knows what it is, but it is a state-funded program that has often helped out local governments with improving paving and pavement conditions in communities. The new close date for community crossings this upcoming round will be August 31st. I believe that was just adjusted last night or this morning. Yeah. So we've been told that it is now going to be August 31st. So just an FYI, that will be the new close date for community crossings. Next item. We've talked about this in previous months, but the bipartisan infrastructure law, the funding bill for a lot of new infrastructure programs, and the renewal of the transportation program has 30% of the new money, if you will, is essentially going to discretionary programs. There's a ton of new discretionary programs. We've talked about this before. MAP 21 and the FAST Act tried to consolidate all of those programs so that there were less buckets of money, and the bipartisan infrastructure bill just really exploded it open into lots of different buckets. So we're all learning the various new programs, and we're trying to educate you on it, and we're educating ourselves on it. I think in the last 2 weeks, 2 or 3 different NOFOs, notice of funding opportunities, have come out from new programs, right? There was the Railroad Crossing Elimination Program that just came out. There was Reconnecting Communities pilot program. There's probably 2 or 3 other ones that came out, which are all programs that really historically have not existed in the past 8 years, right? One of those programs is the Safe Streets and Roads for All. Again, a new program. Many people have asked us, as many of the local governments are trying to figure out, is this something that we should apply for? There's also a regional application that is allowed and encouraged. And everything that we're being told from our contacts at USDOT is probably this first round, because you have to have an approved Safe Streets for All plan before you can get implementation money. And while some folks may feel like they have all of the pieces for an implementation plan, our contacts are saying pretty much they plan to largely just fund planning this first round of the 5 or 6 years of this program. So many folks have asked, what is MACOG going to do And I wanted to explicitly tell everyone that we do plan on applying for a regional application to do a regional plan so that everyone in the region, when the plan is done, is then eligible for implementation. Whether you're the town of Sydney or the city of South Bend or anywhere in between on our communities, any of our counties, everyone theoretically would then be eligible with us as MACOG doing a regional plan. So that is the plan of attack. That's due in September, I believe September 15th. So we're going to work through all those details over the next few months. We may be asking for letters of support or various kind of endorsements and all of those things. Over time, we may also be asking for some additional local match on different elements. We'll talk through the details with all of you as we work through kind of that application. But a few folks have asked us, because I think they've been going like, well, I guess I'll apply if you're not gonna. But I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that is our current plan of attack. So I don't know if anybody had any questions on that. Everybody just kind of sighed of relief that they're not having to apply. So we'll make sure that that's also known more and more. I know a few people have asked, so just wanted to explicitly make sure folks were aware. It is, yep.
Timeline plan versus the plan for
I don't have a lot of detail. We're trying to map some things, so it's still pretty early. I would highly suspect that if we are awarded, that a 12-month time frame probably is a very appropriate time frame. Now, consultants might tell me that that's too aggressive, but I would say that that's probably what we're looking at as just a guessing game. So. All right, our next item, the MACOG call for projects. We issued the MACOG call for projects a little bit earlier this year. Typically, we do that in the fall. We wanted to do that in the summer, and I appreciate everybody working with us on that, because if we're able to do it in the summer and get those projects scored and work through selections, we can get those done before fall, or by fall, I should say. And then any new projects, say that we're going to do new preliminary engineering on, we still have an option to potentially get that funded in fiscal 23. We had to accelerate a lot of our 23 preliminary engineerings, and they got done in 22, which is great because that brings projects forward. But that has created a small gap in funding where we have extra funding in 23. So that's why we wanted to do this call earlier rather than later. So we did receive a number of applications. We'll be working through that process over the next few months, and we'll report back on overall investment strategies and projects that we're recommending for selection. So just an FYI. With that, next up, Michiana on the Move, 2050 Transportation Plan. This is our long-range transportation plan. We have to have a transportation plan that looks out at least 25 years into the future. We don't own any crystal balls, though, to know exactly what 25 years into the future looks like. So we work with all of you to try and think through what it may look like, various scenarios, what are the projects that support the most number of scenarios, and then create kind of a long-range plan around that. It is a multimodal plan that looks at not only roads and bridges, but also trails and transit and other areas as well. We will be working on that really in the next kind of year. Our timeline is to have that done no later than, I think it's October of 23. So over the next few months, we'll be really kicking that off with some internal conversations with all of you, trying to lay some groundwork for kind of existing conditions and just kind of some inputs that we'll need for our modeling and to get our process started. And then we'll have really things throughout this whole next year that'll be focused on trying to get information and putting all of that plan together. So just an FYI that process is about to really kick off, if you will. I was gonna see in my notes. So it's August. We'll be hosting those kickoff meetings with all of our stakeholders in each county, primarily discussing where you see growth happening or not happening, land use, and then trends and regional goals and performance indicators will be the large kind of beginning conversations, but we'll be then releasing public input surveys and public opportunities to be involved kind of throughout that whole long-range plan process. So it's something we do every 4 years. So it's due for an update, and we'll be working on that over the next year. So
by 2050, I expect to be an old man in a flying Jetsons car that doesn't throw my things anymore.
Yeah. So my youngest, who is 8 months old, will be the graduating class of 2040.
All right.
So in 2050, theoretically out of college and beginning workforce, kind of area is. So it feels really far off, but then you throw it in perspective of like, oh, that next generation, that's really like when my kids will be in the workforce. So yeah, it's crazy to think about. So with that, I believe we have one other item, which is for our AmeriCorps program. We did receive the notice that our AmeriCorps program would be funded. Yay! For those not familiar, our AmeriCorps program, this will be that we will host about 15 what we call members. So 15 folks will be members in our AmeriCorps program, and we will have them predominantly focus on topics related to sustainability and resiliency. So we worked through this last year, our kind of resiliency plan coming out of the pandemic, as well as we have a number of things that we work on with local communities around sustainability. In conversations with all those folks, capacity is one of those big challenges for any of those programs, whether it's the sustainability program at a city or focusing on broadband throughout the region, right? Capacity, staff time is one of those challenges. So we are currently looking for service sites. What is a service site? Those are people who will host one of our members and give them the work that they need to do to help them out, right? So an example of a service site is the city of Goshen has I might get the department wrong, but I'll call it a sustainability department. It might be the Department of Environment. Yeah, there we go. See, I knew I was going to get it wrong. But, that is a smaller staff compared to other city-sized staffs of, say, like a Parks Department or a Public Works, but they have an equal amount of work that needs to be done. And so they might be interested in hosting 2 or 3 folks that can help them out with various work products related to environmental resiliency and working through either plans or implementation projects, and that will add capacity to their overall department. I think the rough cost for a member, because we're asking for a cost share, is like $11,000 per member. So if you're thinking through from your community's perspective of topics related to resiliency or sustainability, and you're thinking through like, hey, we have that tree canopy plan that we've been trying to get off the ground and get that, kind of put together, and then we're going to need to plant 10,000 trees, right? I'm just throwing out a hypothetical, but like, that's what you're looking to do. And you're like, yeah, but we only have $15,000 to do all of that. That's not going to get us a person. Well, through the AmeriCorps program, based on our funding and how it all works, if you have $11,000, it might be able to get you that added capacity of a person who will work in your organization. They won't work as an employee in your organization, but they'll work with your organization. So they'll be a member of the AmeriCorps program.
That's for a year.
It is. It's usually a year long, would be considered the full time. We're looking at doing this kind of continually, right? And so depending on the person and what their plans are, it might be for a longer period. It could extend theoretically to a longer period. But I would say the 12-month time frame is what we're roughly looking at. So we have the ability to have 15 members, and we need to then, we have an intake form for service sites. It's a really complicated application. It's your name, your last name, your contact information, like your phone number and email, how many members you would be interested in, and what would you have them do? Because we need to make sure that we're not just looking to add capacity to, say, code enforcement, right? Like, hey, code enforcement, it's a needed thing in communities, but that's not necessarily where this program is targeted, right? We have a targeted kind of what we want to do with the program. And so we need to make sure that we have alignment and that our members are getting meaningful work, right? Because these are highly motivated individuals that are focused around really wanting to serve their country through AmeriCorps. And so we want to make sure that we're able to provide them with meaningful work. And so that's really the application for service sites. And then we'll try to prioritize those. And if you want 15 members, great, but we're probably gonna, split things up and kind of provide some distribution across the region. So if you have any interest in that, it's been in our Gazette and it's on our website, and you can find out more information about that. It's a real quick service site application. I think the applications are due around July, and it's July, I think it's the 18th off the top of my head. So check local listings. But also, the other side of this is that we are trying to recruit 15 people. Okay, those don't all have to be folks that are coming out of university. They might be folks that are already in our region locally, right? And they are looking to get involved in their communities in different ways. This provides for I believe it's not a full salary. I believe it's called a living allowance of a certain amount. But then through doing AmeriCorps, it also provides the ability later to get essentially costs deferred for college and those kind of things. And so there are a number of different benefits. So if you have anybody who's interested, might be a good fit, always been looking to try and get into sustainability, recently been out of the workforce, but getting back in, right? There are a lot, or, looking for a short-term commitment, a 12-month commitment while they're trying to take a gap year between high school and college or something like that, right? Or, college students that are looking to come back to the region, send them our way, because I need to find 15 people, and finding 15 people in this economy right now is very challenging. So we are building up that pipeline of folks. And so I have two things: fill out that service site application if you're interested, and if you know of folks, please try and feed them into that pipeline, if you will. All of that information you can find, I believe it's macog.com/AmeriCorps, and AmeriCorps has an S at the end of it.
So you mentioned the 11,000 match. Roughly, what is the compensation that somebody gets, and is there benefits and things like that, or is it just that stipend?
Yeah, no, it's not the 11,000. There's a greater cost, and
That's available on the website. I can
it
look up.
theoretically is. I don't know if, because the announcement of our funding was more recent, so I don't know necessarily if all of that is there. Let me see if I can. All right, Amber's listening. So the living allowance is 22,000, and the educational award is 6,000. There is also health insurance that is included, and you get to serve your community. But I think those are the high level bullet points of kind of the AmeriCorps program. Yep. With that, those are all of our updates.
Thank you very much. On to privilege of the floor. Any questions, comments, any information from those here in attendance, either in person or online? If not, we can go right into the public comment. Do we have any public comments?
There's no public comment in the room that I am aware of. And I've been told there's none online, and we didn't receive any in advance. So,
All right. Thank you very much. With that, the only thing left on the agenda is adjournment. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? All those in favor? And we are adjourned.
I just want to thank Brent for hosting us today. So thank you, Brent, for having us here. Gave us a good excuse to have some Main Street coffee and some from Rise and Roll. So thank you. Also, everybody should note that on August 3rd, we will be back here. Okay. So August 3rd, we will be back here. I honestly think, Brent, that the room works. I think we just got to figure out from our end, the display side,